Now let's talk the Dallas Cowboys. And Stephen, this is a team that I am also a little bit further down on, not higher on than most of everybody out there. Mike McCarthy's back, of course. Kellen Moore's back. Dan Quinn is back. The thing is they didn't really bring in all that much and they lost a lot. You know, they brought in Dante Fowler. Yes, that is great. They brought in James Washington, they thought was going to be great. Now he's out 8 to 10 weeks. So you trade away Amari Cooper. Randy Gregory's gone. Your right tackle and Lyle Collins is gone. Your left guard and Connor Williams is gone. Keanu Neal, your safety, is gone. Greg the Leg is gone. You know, I mean, Cedric Wilson, who kind of under the radar was a decent little third option in the receiving game for them, is gone. I think that, and sure, they did get Tyler Smith in the first round, offensive tackle, so he can come in and he can play and take over for Lyle Collins being gone. I do get that. Jalen Tolbert, their third round wide receiver, because of the circumstances, is going to have to step in. He's going to have to get big minutes for them right off the bat. So he's going to have to play a lot of plays for them. I just look at this Cowboys squad and from what they lost, from what they brought in, for the balance that I feel is in this division right now, Steven, I just don't think they are as big of an odds-on favorite to win this division. You know, plus 135, the best number you can get. It's as low as plus 110 out there in the market. I like the Eagles just as much, and we'll talk about them in just a second. I like them just as much or better than this Cowboys squad, and certainly nothing even relatively close to me putting in a plus 135 bet for them to win this division.
Matt, sometimes the best thing you can do in betting is learning from your past mistakes. And on this podcast a year ago, maybe a month or two into the season, we were all pretty optimistic about the Cowboys. Mm-hmm. They were winning games easily by multiple possessions. They looked like one of the most impressive teams in the league. And at that juncture, we thought, really our only concern at this point is the coaching staff, but maybe they have enough talent to overcome that coaching staff. And then their season ends in the playoffs with a quarterback draw down a touchdown with 14 seconds left from the opposing 41-yard line, and they couldn't get another playoff because of the stupidest play call in maybe playoff history. No team has run the ball with under 20 seconds left when trailing in the last 25 years in the playoffs. So it was like the cherry on top of the cake of the argument that Mike McCarthy is a buffoon. And can this coaching staff get out of the way of the talent on this roster? Because Sharp Football has the Cowboys as one of just 3 teams that rank in the top half of the league in every offensive and defensive unit. Now, if we dig a little bit deeper, Matt, 9 of their 12 wins last year came against horrific quarterbacks. Taylor Heineke twice, Daniel Jones, Mike Glennon, Jalen Hurts, who I'm optimistic about, but he was still basically a rookie last year. Gardner Minshew in one Eagles game. Sam Darnold, Taysom Hill, and Matt Ryan in the terrible Falcons. So how good was this team really last year? 6-5 over their last 11 games, including the playoffs. And that was with above average health. They didn't have any really big injury issues. So to me, what stood out, and credit to Warren Sharp for noting this, the schematics were horrible. The game planning was horrible. It was completely predictable. When Dak Prescott was under center, they threw it 33% of the time. When he was in shotgun, they threw it 78% of the time. That pass rate difference based on where the quarterback was lined up was the biggest in the NFL. They were absolutely telegraphing to defenses what their likely play was going to be, whether it was run or pass, in multiple different situations. The splits were just as stark when they were in 11 or 12 personnel. And on top of that, there's even more coaching malpractice when you look at the backfield situation. We've now had 2 complete seasons where it has been abundantly clear to everybody except for Jerry Jones and Mike McCarthy that Tony Pollard is far and away the superior back to Ezekiel Elliott. Except in 2020, Zeke had more than 100 rushing attempts over Pollard. And last year, the same situation, 107 more rushing attempts than Pollard, despite the fact that Pollard was better in yards after contact, was better on a per rush basis than EPA, and last year was better in success rate. So why should I trust that this coaching staff this year is magically going to make good decisions?
You want to give you one more? How about this? They also led the league in penalties last year with
Oh
127 of
man.
them. So it's one of those things where, yes, sometimes it is players' faults, but a lot of times these heavily penalized teams does fall back on the coaching staff from a discipline standpoint, from putting guys in positions to not succeed, right, to fail. And so 127 penalties for this team. They got away with it because they were plus 14 in turnover margin. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that Micah Parsons had one of the best rookie seasons we've ever seen from a defender ever. But it's going to balance out, right? I mean, it's if they don't shore things up from the penalty standpoint, then it's could be even worse than it was last year. You look at the secondary in a passing league, in a league that when we talk about the Eagles in a second, we think could be better. We think that there could be maybe some upside here for the Giants. This is like a bottom third secondary, right? I mean, Trayvon Diggs, Kelvin Joseph, Malik Hooker, Jaron Kearse, Jordan Lewis. These are all just middle of the pack guys. No standout whatsoever whenever you look at this. I mean, look, the defensive line, if anytime you have DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons on the same line, that's going to be great. But the times that they don't get pressure and leave it up to this secondary, I think that this team could get passed on, and this team could get passed on a good bit over the course of the season. I'm not saying the Cowboys are going to be bad by any stretch.
Right.
I think they're going to be just exceptionally average. And that's kind of my read on this squad. I have no bet on them. It's more would just be a bet against them because I'm betting on other teams to win the division. I think that the win total number is about appropriate. I think that everything else from this is about appropriate. I think if we look at the projection systems here, it has them in that kind of 9 to 11 win window about half the time, and I think that is, again, about appropriate. So for me, Steve, it's just a team that doesn't move the meter for me. I don't hate them. I don't like them or love them. They're just kind of meh for me when it comes to the Cowboys this season.
Yeah, I mean, it's not atypical for the Cowboys to be priced so much so that it's really hard to be bullish on them, right? Like this is one of the more popular teams nationally. They're going to get a lot of public bets in the preseason. So it's hard to find value in the Cowboys in any market going into the season because of that's just the way they're typically priced.
20 to
So
1, the best number you can find for them to win the Super Bowl. 20 to 1 is the best
yeah,
number you can find. You can get the Ravens, you can get the Bengals, you can get the Colts, you can get the Eagles, like Vikings, you can get you can get all these teams at far, far, far longer number than you can get the Cowboys. And so it's like I said, it's just a no bet team for me. I'll look to maybe bet on them or against them week to week as the season comes around, but really nothing from the futures market for me.
yeah, we've been pretty pessimistic talking about the Cowboys so far. I do want to give some optimism because I think Dak Prescott is really good. And him coming back from that injury last year, I thought he was really impressive. He was top 5 in EPA per attempt in standard drops when he was in the pocket on first downs in the first 3 quarters with no play action on early downs, on easy layup throws. So he did his job. He was also good in less stable stats. Number 1 under pressure in EPA per attempt. When he got outside the pocket, he was still top 10. When he was blitzed, he was still top 10. On dropbacks versus pressure, he was sacked at the 8th lowest rate, which is important because if you look at Rich Rebar's research on this, other than turnovers, drives with a sack over the last 5 years are the biggest indicator of scoring difference. When you have a drive with a sack, you're only scoring at a little more than 22% of the time. You're only scoring a touchdown less than 8% of the time. And you're punting more than 52% of the time when you have a sack on that drive. And Dak was good at avoiding that and escaping pressure and being accurate on the run. So it's just a matter of last year was a situation where he was not able to overcome the coaching deficiencies and his staff putting him in situations where it was predictable for a defense to know what was coming before the ball was even snapped. So for those reasons, I was looking at reasons to be bearish on this team at really good odds compared to what it would cost you to be bullish. And I think plus 240 to miss the playoffs is a better bet than under 10 wins at minus 110. I think there's some correlation there. So I think this conference is going to be one with the extra game on the schedule and some pretty decent teams at the top. I think 10 wins is probably what it's going to take to make the playoffs. I know we had the Eagles make it at 9 wins last year, but at more than double the price, why not just take the plus 240 to miss the playoffs if you want to bet against the Cowboys this year?